Before we start, my colleague Zlatko will introduce the final workings of the Zoom platform we are working on. So please, Zlatko, tell us about it.
Okay, thank you, Rasmus. As some of you may have already noticed, I've just muted you all. I just took a sound away from you. I've done so to avoid the background noise during the presentation. That doesn't mean that you won't be able to get your sound back. After the presentation, you will be able to pose your questions through your microphone. I will again allow you to speak up. If you have a question, we'll do it this way. On your PCs at the bottom line, you have a bar on which you have to find the chat somewhere in the middle. Click on the chat and a bar and write to me, Zlatko Jovanovic, that you have a question. And then I'll make a list with questions, and after the presentation, I'll let you pose your question yourself. In case that you don't have a microphone, you can also write the question to me and just let me know. Then I will be able to pose your question to the debate to everybody. And so that will be as well very good. I also want to say that it's nice that many of you have a camera. It's best way to debate when we can see each other. So if you don't mind, it will be best to have a question at least when asking your questions. But if you don't have camera, it's also okay with us as well. When you are watching the presentation and the debate, you have two different options on Zoom platform here to see it. They are called speaker and gallery view. If you are with the PC, it's on the upper right corner. There are like 9 small dots. You click on those, and then you have a chance to option to choose between speaker view and to see only the person who is speaking at the moment in a big screen, or to see a gallery view to see everybody. If you by chance are sitting with iPad, then you will find this option on the left side of your screen. And finally, I also want to inform you that I am recording this debate, as we always do. It will be later placed on our YouTube channel. That's it from me. Welcome and enjoy it.
Thank you, Zlatko. My name is Rasmus Nallem Sørensen, and I am the General Secretary of what is called the Democracy in Europe organization. And in collaboration with the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, Brussels department, we are organizing a series of online debates on post-COVID, or as it is now, COVID debates on democracy and economy. And this is the 4th debate in the series. And this time we delve into, as the title says, climate neutrality and democratic ownership after the COVID crisis, but this is not really after in all countries. So what the European Union is looking at with the Green Deal, the big plan to go green, is, as they put it in the Commission, it's a reboot of the economy with a lot of money influx, a lot of stimulus packages. And the idea is to reboot the economy in a green way. So the green transition must take its lead from the stimulus packages and the new sort of ambitions for a green Europe. But what we want to investigate a bit more in detail here today is whether we can sort of reboot the economic system as well, because there might be some flaws in the capitalist system and the system of capitalist ownership when it comes to going through a green transition. And in order to get a bit of grasp on this, we've invited Ulrik, and you can see him with his full name, Ulrik Omar Sebastian Kohl. And Ulrik, you're a PhD both in Denmark at Roskilde and in Sweden at Malmö University. And what exactly is it that you're doing a PhD on?
Good evening, everybody, and thanks very much to Deo and also Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung for inviting me. I'm working on a project with the Institute for Urban Research at Malmö University, as you said, Rasmus, and with the Roskilde University to empower local energy activists. And we're working partly in Denmark and partly in Southeast Europe. And actually, I'm joining you tonight from a small village in Croatia. This village, Trpanje, is situated between some mountains, so there might be some problems with the connection. If there is, we have a plan B, but I apologize on forehand.
And apart from your PhD and your research project, you have a lot of experience from the city council in Copenhagen. Can you tell us a bit more about that? You've been in the city council for some 5 years or so.
Yes, I'm educated as an urban planner, and I have a background as an organizer in grassroots movement, in the trade union movement, and also in my political party, the Red Green Alliance. Copenhagen is a stronghold for the Red Green Alliance in Denmark, and Copenhagen is interesting maybe in a wider context than just Denmark, because Copenhagen has a very ambitious climate and energy policy. Copenhagen wants to be the first carbon neutral capital in the world by 2025. And I have the privilege to work with my party on some of these issues. And I've also been part of the board of one of the city's energy companies.
Thank you for that. And just the last question before I leave the floor to you, is what are you doing in the Balkan region? Because you're not just there this 2 days for a conference, but you live there.
Yes, I've been based the last half year in Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And actually at the moment there are many very, very interesting things going on at grassroots level. Right now I'm in Croatia because there's a gathering of energy activists from all along the Adriatic coast, Mediterranean communities, small and big, who are aiming to become energy independent, to create their own solar farms, windmills, etc., to be order to both take over control of their own energy situation, but also to create jobs, to create a better way of treating Mother Nature, and to create hope for the young people and the kids who are, as in many peripheral areas of Europe, are leaving and migrating towards bigger cities or towards other countries. So there's a lot of very interesting and inspiring things going on. And right now I'm at a conference here, at a gathering, but thanks to the Zoom technology, we are still in the same room somehow.
Thank you, Ulrik, and a warm welcome to you, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us here. And you're most welcome to come forward with your questions. Just write my colleague Zlatko in the chat and you can get the microphone. So we're passing around a virtual microphone here in the debate room. But Ulrik, you've promised to give us a brief presentation of some of your main points on what kind of opportunities you see for a green transition through democratic ownership, and maybe some of the pitfalls in the ambitions or the methods of, for example, the Copenhagen City Council, and also come forward with some suggestions for how to work with these issues further on. So please do.
Yes, I think our starting point is that the climate emergency is very, very real and very urgent, and that the good things we do tomorrow, we will benefit from them for the rest of our lives, and the good things that we don't do tomorrow, and not talking about the bad things that we continue doing, will come back and haunt us, not just for the rest of our lives, but for generations to come. And that's why I think this discussion is very, very important. Changing the climate emergency is, as many crises are, also an opportunity to fundamentally change our relationship as people towards nature, our surroundings, but also importantly, the relationship between us as humans, to create a society that's more based on solidarity, based on equality, based on respect, with better opportunities to live a beautiful life. I think that now we're talking about one element in this major change for humankind and for our societies. And this point is about how we produce the energy that we use. But of course, this is one element. There are other things that are also important. The way we live, our buildings, the way we move ourselves and our goods, the way we trade, not the least, in the world. All these things are important elements. But tonight we will focus on the energy that we all consume. That is the major source of the carbon emissions that are destroying our climate. It's not a question of whether it will destroy our climate. That has already happened. We have passed that point. Question is, what are the things we can do now to handle the catastrophe that is unfolding? So I think that I'd like to start with a little story from where I grew up. I grew up in the north of Denmark in a rural community called a place called Vendsyssel, a very traditional and conservative place. And I was living on a farm, and I remember the first windmill coming up. And it was there was an experimental school for young adults called Miljøhøjskolen, the environmental school. And the people who went to this school were not popular in the community. They looked different. A lot of people thought that, a lot of people in the community thought that their ideas of another way of agriculture with using less pesticide, etc., were some kind of an insult to the traditional way of life. And when they built the first windmill in the area, that was kind of, this windmill became like the symbol of everything that was wrong with these people. And I remember sitting in the bus, and it was this kind of, rural bus. You don't have bus stops. You just tell the driver, please stop at the next tree, or please stop at the next farm. I'll get off. And these students from the environmental school, when they asked to be for the bus to stop at the school, the driver would just pretend he didn't hear them and drive 1 kilometer further down the road before letting them out. And everybody in the bus thought that was pretty awesome, because nobody liked these guys. That was maybe funny on board of the bus, but it's not funny when you're walking in rain and wind for a kilometer, because everybody hates you. At some point, one of the teachers or leaders of the school became involved in producing small-scale windmills for local farmers. And then one farmer one day put up a windmill, and then his neighbor saw that he actually were making money on this electricity, or reduction at that point on the electricity bill. And then more and more of these windmills came up. Then nobody thought that these windmills were ugly. And then years later, there was a big wind farm built. And at that one point, a concert is held there. This guy, I don't know, I grew up in the 80s. I don't know if anybody remembers this guy anymore, from France, Jean-Michel Jarre. He was like a pioneer in new age electronic music. I don't think people listen to this anymore, but he was famous for having a laser harp and this kind of thing. And he came to make a concert here close to Roskilde, where I grew up, which was this huge international concert, a tribute to wind energy. And this is pretty much where my old community peaked. Everybody thought, this is fantastic. Tens of thousands of people were coming to see this concert. Finally, Roskilde, we are on the world map. And the funny thing about this story, I think, is the point is that it's not about the technology. It's not about the windmill or the solar farm or whatever. It's about people. It's about the people, how we relate to this technology, how we use it, what it means for us. There's also another point in time. These kind of mental changes, they require time. They require a lot of patience and persistence. And we don't have enough time now to waste. We don't have time to waste. We need to do the right things the first time. So many of these, there's a lot of talk about the transition. We need to transit from oil and then use gas and then use biomass and so on. We need to go step by step by step. But maybe we don't have time to do anything else but the radical right solutions the first time. Sometimes when I was talking yesterday to a colleague from or a friend from Denmark who said, "Oh, what are you doing? Community energy? Ah, that's something with a windmill in a village somewhere. Is that is that it?" But and I think that is yes, it is about small communities getting together to take power of their own energy production, but it's far more than that. For those of you who are not familiar with Copenhagen, one of the first things you see when you if you sail into Copenhagen or you fly into Copenhagen is an arc of windmills built just on the outside the harbor front of Copenhagen, some 20 windmills. They are a part of a cooperative and partly owned by the municipality as an example of how this community energy is not just about small scale, it's also about how we power our big cities. When this offshore wind farm was built, it was the biggest in the world. It's some 20 years back, and it was not built by a group of hippies only. It was built by some 10,000 shareholders, not shareholders, but members of the cooperative. So that's one. It's actually a great example of what is possible to achieve when the activists, when the grassroots work hand to hand together with local government. So if we look at community energy's role, the citizen-driven wind farms, solar parks, biogas, etc. In Denmark, it's like that most of our electricity comes now from wind power. Most of the wind power is based, some of the wind power is offshore in the sea, but most of it is on the land. And most of these windmills are actually owned by citizens, either individually or in the form of co-ops. So it's not a niche phenomenon. It has been a driving force of the slow transition from fossil fuels to clean energy in Denmark. In Germany, there's a very similar picture. I think it's around 50% of the renewable energy sources in Germany that are owned by citizens. For Copenhagen's strategy to become carbon neutral, this kind of mix between citizen initiatives and the municipal renewable energy production is also very important. But then something happens. There are a few wind farms in Copenhagen, in the city of Copenhagen, on the shore of the city of Copenhagen, and also in the urban area. But in order to scale up, the city is building or trying to build wind farms outside of the city. And for example, we have conflicts in some of the southern islands in the Baltic Sea, where the city of Copenhagen, or the energy company of the city of Copenhagen, wants to build windmills. And suddenly, big surprise in Copenhagen, the islanders, they don't feel the least interested in helping Copenhagen become the first climate carbon neutral capital in the world. They don't give, they don't care about this. Why don't they care about it? Why should they care about that? It doesn't have anything to do with them. And I think that's a very, very important thing when we're talking about both community energy projects and municipal renewable energy projects, that the connection with the base, the connection with the people who need to support it, who need to stand looking at it, who are the ones who should benefit from this, not just in the abstract sense of handling the climate emergency, but also benefiting in the form of transforming the society, of creating a more solidaric society, creating jobs and growth and opportunities. If you lose that connection, then things are not moving forward. And that's very much, this is not just a freaky example, it's very much happening all over Denmark. Local groups organize, get together to fight wind farms. It's happening big scale in Germany, in Norway, in many places. So instead of having the people organizing in favor of having their own wind farms, we suddenly have them organizing against other people's wind farm. And actually, there is also, because of the, and this is related to policy changes. Of course, in Denmark and also in the European Union, the schemes, the rules that makes it possible for grassroots to make energy cooperatives are being changed in a way that, even though there's paid lip service, the politicians like to talk about how people should get engaged and involved. In reality, the doors are being closed for cooperatives and instead opened for the big players. In Denmark, we've seen a dramatic a dramatic drop in the number of wind cooperatives from around 1,000. Now in 10 years, it's dropped to less than 200. I'll not go into the technical details, but I'll just point the finger in the direction of the government and the EU rules, who are directly a part of this problem. But of course, it's dialectic, because in the first place, there was no room for energy cooperatives. Now I'm talking about the Danish experience, but the grassroots movement made it possible. They pressured the politicians to make it possible. So there is this. What is lacking is the political mobilization to focus the politics on this. I'd like to not make a conclusion, but stop my this intro in order to open the floor so we can debate these issues or related issues. I'd like to point at three concrete things that I think we have to do now, and that we can do now as progressive people, as people who take the climate emergency seriously. The first thing is very, very basic thing that surprisingly too many of us don't do. We don't care about a simple thing as our electricity bill. We need to ask questions to the electricity bill. Where does this energy come from? Who made it? How was it made? How can I be part of making the energy that I consume myself in the form of a cooperative, in the form of that my municipality or my village, my community takes control of this resource. The second thing is, I think we need to radicalize energy politics. We need to have to stop this. There's a mystification. The new technologies have some kind of a golden glow. Also on the left, for example, in Denmark, we have super focus on building huge energy islands in the North Sea, on high-tech carbon capture and storage project technologies that may work, that may not work, but have the thing in common that they are super nice fit into the existing setup of large corporations and companies, to create not a different kind of society, but to create exactly the same kind of unequal capitalist society we have now, just low carbon. Too late to make a difference. So instead of focusing on high-tech, sexy solutions, we should focus on the technologies that are proven to work, that are cheap, that you can do in small scale and that you could do in big scale. And the third thing I think that is very, very important and is related to this is that public companies in a country like Denmark plays a huge role. Municipal companies, intra-municipal companies in all the utility sector, and especially in energy. These companies are largely totally off the radar in the media and in the public sphere. So there's no there's no way that you can elect these boards of these public companies as a citizen. And we need to do that. There are a few examples of it, and I think these few examples where you can actually vote for the representative in municipal companies, they prove that it's possible to politicize these elections, and that if you don't do that, then you have politically appointed board members who are often have zero clue about what's going on, who have zero interest in it, and who will follow all kind of other motives in their work, in their strategic work, than serving what is necessary in this climate emergency, and what is necessary to serve the people who actually end up paying the bill, that is the citizens. And I can give a lot of examples, horrible examples of that, but I will not do that.
Let's get into some of the examples if they become necessary.
Yes.
But if you have questions, please come forward with them. And at the moment we're so few, so you can just raise your hand in the picture and I can see it and give you the microphone. So if you have some questions or comments, please come forward with them. Yes, Pete West from the UK.
Okay. That was really interesting and inspiring, Ulrik. I agree with virtually every word you said. I've got some connection with Denmark. I'm a member of the management board of the International Network for Sustainable Energy, which is based in Aarhus. And also, I've visited Denmark quite a number of times, including your area in North Jutland at the Folk Center for Renewable Energy. And also, I know Ulrik Kohl from Copenhagen, who was helped set up that cooperative of 10,000 people 20 years ago. I'm a director of a community energy group in the south of the UK, Dorset Community Energy, and we have got the first example in England of local electricity trading through the existing grid from local renewables. It's exactly what you said. It's a way of people actually working together to solve the climate crisis, but it's extremely difficult. It's taken us 2 years. And we've just launched the local trading with an initial pilot group of 12 householders who are buying electricity from locally owned renewables through the grid, but it's in partnership with a conventional electricity company who can see, they can develop the software to meter the generation and the consumption every half hour. And basically the household is selling solar electricity and wind electricity at about, what would it be, 10, it's about 2/3 the price of grid electricity, because it's avoiding the long distance transmission costs. And the company, the electricity company, utility company, is happy to do that. But it needs a much, much, much bigger change in the whole regulation to enable this local trading. We've been working with not-for-profit consultants who have had several years' experience in negotiating these type of bespoke arrangements, but there's only 5 examples in the whole UK, 4 in Wales, with the first in England. So it's very, very difficult because we haven't got the enabling legislation. With it, honestly, I think it would just take off dramatically.
So the big question, as I hear it, is there's a question of infrastructure and who controls it, and how is it regulated, and how does this infrastructure relate to the community groups you talk about, Ulrik and Pete West, the ones you represent. So what kind of rules at a national level or EU level do we need and have? And what kind of activities do we need in communities to move forward?
I think it's like this, that you have in the center of this necessary clean energy transition, you have in the center, you have the people, you have the communities, you have the local organization of people who want this to happen and who build up power to make it happen. Then you have the question of the technology. The technology is there, it's proven, it has been there for decades. You have the question of financing. How do you get the funds there? Where do these funds come from? Do they come from the community itself or from outside the community, etc.? There are a lot of models for this. And then you have the rules. And the rules, I think it's important to see it not just as a set of technical legal procedures decided by experts, but seeing it essentially as political. Who is making lobby for these rules? I'm not familiar with the situation in UK, but who is losing when community energy is rising? These companies will do their maximum effort to make a legislation that makes life impossible for the grassroots who are creating this. And Denmark is the case that I know better. It's full of these efforts by lobbyists of the established energy companies who are afraid of losing a very, very lucrative market. So it comes back to the political struggle to make the voice of the community heard, to convince, to make it political, not technical, not as a thing for experts. We must become everyday experts on something that is so essential for us as the energy that we consume. There is one big battlefield. Now, Rasmus, you ask, what kind of rules do we need? One of the reasons why community energy it took off explosively in Denmark is because of a very, very simple mechanism called feed-in tariffs. That means that when you, as a community, get together and make a rooftop solar farm, you know that the very sunny days where you produce more energy than you use, you can sell it to a price that you have agreed with the electricity company, that somehow the state is guaranteeing for this, to put it in simple terms. That means you can plan 10 years ahead, 20 years ahead, you can secure bank loans, etc. But this this model has been very much pushed to the back by a more neoliberal idea about tenders. We must have tenders. That's a policy of the Danish government. It's a policy of the EU. They're rolling this out everywhere where they can. We must have tenders. So yet now it's not about the community planning a project. It's about different project makers, investors who are competing in a tender for being given this project. And the consequence of this is not just that it's killing cooperatives, it's killing Danish cooperatives, both those emerging, but also those who have been running for 20 or 30 years and now need to renew themselves. But it's also pressing down the profits for the same energy companies that are competing, which leads again to a lack of investment because it's not so lucrative anymore, which means that the whole idea of, let's say, the political idea, or the political excuse for making these neoliberal reforms is that it doesn't matter who does it, we just need a lot of clean energy. It undermines this, because why would you, as a professional investor, invest in a project where the margins of profits are getting smaller and smaller because of the very nature of the tender, that who wins the tender is the one who will build the cheapest solution. So it's undermining the whole possibility of having large-scale transition to clean energy, not just in Denmark, but in Europe.
We have a question from Pia C. Jensen. Do you want to pose it yourself, Pia? Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Please come forward then.
I have a question for you. I have worked with turbines for 14 years, so I know some of it, and I have many questions, but I will take one. Turbines have some problems, noise, size, and so on. That means that neighbors don't want turbines. It's not only about the money. Have you looked at these problems?
I don't think that there is, I will not come up with an answer to how is it possible to make renewable energy without having a negative consequence. I think we need to think of renewable energy projects not just as the good thing, the right thing that must be built everywhere. Definitely not. They must, the ideal project is built according to the needs and the visions of the local community where they are placed. We have just before starting the meeting, Zlatko, the moderator, or the person controlling the meeting, actually behind the scenes, was explaining his background. It is from a local community struggle against a renewable energy project, a hydro dam. And there are, if we're looking at this region, that is a major source of popular mobilizations in Southeast Europe, especially in the Western Balkans. It is communities getting together to actually fight a proposed dam project that will kill their local river. The important thing is also that some of these mobilizations are also the starting point of presenting the alternative. And I think that is also maybe a lesson. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you will, maybe you have another reading of this, but of the Danish, why did Denmark at certain point achieve what Denmark did in renewable energy? There's a connection between the struggle against what you don't want, in the Danish case, the nuclear energy strategy of the government, and the need to then say, then what? I don't want this, but then what do I want? And how do I want it? And who can build it? And I think it's not to talk around the issue of the problems. You say noise, it can be other aspects also. But there are also lots of examples that people live with these negative elements because they value the positive elements more.
I'm sorry, but I have experienced that neighbors don't want it, and they don't have an answer to what they don't want it. They don't care. They say not in my backyard. I'm sorry, but it has developed 14 years ago. It was easier. Today it's almost impossible onshore. I think if you have to get wind turbines, it's offshore. I think it's very, very difficult today to get neighbors to be positive about it. I'm sorry.
So, well, that is a very good question, in fact.
Yeah,
and I'll pose it in a slightly different framing, because what about the big energy companies entering the green transition race? We've seen it in Denmark, but we also see it in England and Great Britain. We see it in Germany. Big energy companies doing big projects offshore, for example, energy islands. So what's the problem with that? Because that would sort of relieve the neighbors to the windmills, and the neighbors in the middle of the North Sea.
I want to get back to the question about you can't build any more windmills on the shore in Denmark. Let's start with the basics. It's far more expensive to build in the sea than building on the land. That's the point of departure. The money you invest in building something that is very expensive, you don't have that money to invest in other renewable energy initiatives. When I was a councilor in the city of Copenhagen, and we are looking at where is it possible to build windmills in our own municipality. Of course, there's a lot of space. When I look out of my window in where I used to live in Copenhagen, I see my own windmill in Prøvesten, which is a very small co-op with some 500 members. I see the windmill. I love to see it turn around in the wind. There are large industrial areas just south of this location where it is technically feasible to place a far bigger wind farm, and where wind conditions are optimal and you are not destroying a natural place. There are all kinds of other considerations, ownership of this, that makes this more difficult. But I totally don't agree that you can't build any more windmills on land. I think Copenhagen that is supposed to be the most impossible place to build a windmill, a place where it is so densely populated. And I can give examples of where you can build more. So I think I don't agree on this premise. I think it can end becoming a myth that is based on certain space-specific facts, that in this place there's resistance, in this place there's resistance, but why did this resistance come up in the first place? That is not the same as to say you need to build all the dams you can. In the river regions, you need to build all the onshore windmills you can in every village, in every natural reserve. Of course not. But I think it is of course there is a point where you don't want to build where it gets more and more difficult to find the right locations for windmills. Then what about rooftop solar farms? Talking again about where to place them in the minds of many people. When you say a solar farm, they think about a greenfield site. They think about some agricultural area where you put up a lot of solar, where you put up a solar farm, which then makes it impossible to have agricultural use, or you are maybe destroying a place with that has a natural value. But we have so extremely much built area, rooftops, highways, parking spaces, etc., 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 that are ideal locations for solar farms. And the reason why they are not built is not because that people don't want to live underneath a solar farm. It's because of the it's a political problem. It's not a problem about disturbing the neighbors.
We have a question or a comment from Sven Petersen. Do you want to pose it yourself, Sven, or?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I come also from Vendsyssel, where you come from, but you said it is the conservative part of the country. I'm not quite sure it's so conservative as you put it. I will first tell that a couple of weeks ago, I attended a conference in Hirtshals. It was about the new development of the harbor in Hirtshals, where they want to put up a new system for power to X and other things. And at that meeting, at that conference, we were about 200-300 people, and 200 of them, they were businessmen. Some of them, they had billions of kroner in they could come and invest, and they talked about invest about 2 or 3 billion Danish kroner in this project in Hirtshals. All the participants, they talked about how they could make business from it. The only one who didn't talk about business, it was the former chairman of the UN General Assembly, Mogens Lykketoft. He talked about that we should also put together this new development. We should put it together with equality, as you also talked about. But my point is that 200 businessmen, they were sitting there. They wanted to have a big share, as big as possible, in this transition into a new development of energy production. So for the grassroots, it's really uphill, because the grassroots, they don't have the billions they can spend as a businessman when they can. Okay, it was just a comment. Then I will ask a question about the windmills. In Denmark, we have this law that says if you build a windmill, then it should be in one or another way, it should be community-based. And how can you community-base a windmill? Okay, the people who live around, they can buy some shares, some stocks in this windmill. And they then, in the city council, they will say, okay, here you can see this is a community-based people. They are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Do you have a comment on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Sven.
Yeah, thank you, Sven, and thanks for the the very positive news from my old from where I grew up. I think that it's not a problem that business is interested and that there are private investments. I think that's absolutely necessary, because funds need to be made available. The point is who is controlling what the investments are for, and how what is actually built, how is it designed in relationship to, one, the local community that has to carry the project somehow on their shoulders, and two, related to the kind of radical change that we need in our energy policy, but also in a broader sense, the radical change we need in our way of constructing society, not just the small society, Hirtshals, the village, the city, but as the one humankind that we are on the one planet that we have, because what we do in Hirtshals is related to what happens in the rest of the global sphere. So I think the question of local control is extremely important. The best mechanism I can think of is, one, that that local politicians, local government are the closest level of governance we have to the people. There is a chance of replacing these people in 4 years, and we're talking about projects that have such an effect on the community that people usually remember them. With our national politicians, we usually don't remember what they did 4 years ago or 2 years ago when it comes to election time, because there are so many issues in the play. In local communities, it's smaller, and it's more. There's a stronger democratic relationship. But that goes together with direct elections and direct participation of citizens in the municipal or local public companies that will be controlling this wind farm or solar farm, whatever. So I think it's these two tools to use in able to control the power of the private investor.
Thank you. Like, I have a question for you, because you focus a lot on the local level and sort of engagement at community level. But what the European Union is doing is working to build an energy union and an EU-wide market for electricity. So it's an electrification of energy, and it's an infrastructure to distribute this electricity in Europe. And if we want to rely more on renewables, we need to store the energy when we don't use it locally, or we need to distribute it very widely in order to have enough energy in a large region. So how do you solve this community-based production with regional, national, or EU-wide consumption of energy? What kind of solutions do you see there?
I'm not an EU policy expert. So I will not go into to commenting on EU energy policy. I'll just say that we're not talking, when we're talking about local control or local production, we're not talking about off-grid communities. We're talking about, this is a part of a larger sum. And the connectivity is, of course, crucial. And today, where you're sitting in Copenhagen, when you switch on the light, you don't know, is this produced by Swedish nuclear power, or is it produced by my cooperative, the windmill, or is it, or where does it come from? Because we trade like that. So that's not in itself. It's not. It's not a problem. It's a necessity that our grids are balanced, and they are balanced because we can send energy to where it is needed. The problem is, for example, that when you have the concept of it doesn't matter where renewable energy is produced and by whom and under which conditions, you have exactly the situation that in the project makers who are destroying the natural resources in the local community. For example, in this example that Zlatko mentioned of the river projects in Bosnia near Vitez, this is very much supported by the EU energy policy, because they don't care about this. They think, okay, but we have destined some money for these kind of investments, because it doesn't matter who does the job as long as the job gets done.
Zlatko, I think we have one question. Maybe we can find time for that last question. So when you answer it, Ulrik, you can round up maybe.
Yeah, it's a question from Else Maria Book. I don't know if you can ask it yourself, or should I read it? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not in the video, but anyway, I just actually wrote it in the beginning, because I say it's very, very interesting aspect also on how the people, the role we have as citizens or local people or so. So because we are towards the end, I'll just say thank you very much for all your commitments, because I was very interested also in how they go about it in the Eastern countries where you are also very strongly involved. But I just remind us then that we have a local election coming up very soon, and I was to be at a meeting tonight at the same time as now, locally in Vandløse. But I think that it's important also that we ask some of these questions, and we ask each other what we're doing here and how we want our local society to look like. So I just wish everybody would have been listening tonight. But thanks a lot, and let's continue these issues. It's important to us and our children, next generations, but also ourselves. Thank you for good what can I say, discussion or presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Else Marie and Ulrik, that's a nice pat on your shoulder, but could you finish this meeting by giving us just a few examples of how to join this battle for a green transition that is also socially sustainable? Do you have some suggestions to end on?
Yeah, I will also say thank you very much, Else Marie. That was a very a beautiful wrap up. I think the key is what you also said. This is also for future generations. We are doing something that is not easy. A transition from a way of life that we have known all our lives, that we just switch on the light without thinking about it. We just take our car, go somewhere without thinking about it. We're used to that in a country like Denmark, that our municipal governments, it doesn't really matter so much if we go to elections, because there will be fresh water that we can drink, and somebody will pick up our garbage, and the school will be open no matter what we do. But I think this is the essence of the climate emergency, is that what has worked until this point in our lives is not enough, and we are not going to be. It's not going to be fixed by experts. It's not going to be fixed by business, by some kind of new innovation where energy will come from solar picked up in outer space and projected down to us, wireless or something like that. No, we need to take control and take responsibility of what we use, the energy we use, and how it's made. Nobody else is doing it for us, and we need to make those politicians that we have locally, nationally, at EU level, responsible and responsive to take this big change, this big leap forward. So thank you very much for all the interventions and the criticisms and the suggestions and comments and everything. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Ulrik. And we've built up a reputation for the pathetic Zoom clap. So everybody turns on the microphone and do the pathetic Zoom clap. So, a lot better than nothing. But thanks a lot, Ulrik, and thank you for coming here and trying to explain how to go through a green transition and also a social transition, maybe, or economic transition. We'll follow up with more meetings in this series of debates, and you'll be able to find them on our webpage and on the webpage of the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung in Brussels. Thank you, Ulrik, and thank you all for coming here.